Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to dissect what is arguably the single most expensive reasoning error in modern business. We are looking at that perilous and frankly reckless leap from observing two variables that happen to move together to blindly assuming one actively causes the other. Let's approach this with absolute rigor.
Picture a scenario you have undoubtedly witnessed in your own boardroom. A highly paid consultant puts up a striking visual at your executive offsite. It claims that companies in the top quartile of employee engagement are 22% more profitable. The implication feels perfectly direct, doesn't it? The CEO immediately turns to human resources and commands, "We must drive engagement. The numbers are clear." But I must warn you right now, the numbers do not say what the CEO believes they say. This is a statistical illusion, and the firm's capital is about to be deployed based on an absolute mirage.
The very first step in our defense is drawing an uncompromising boundary between two fundamentally different concepts. On one side, we have correlation. Correlation is purely descriptive. It merely states that two variables seem to move together in a predictable rhythm within your dataset. On the other side, we have causation. This is the generative reality, where one variable actually directly produces the other. Here is the absolutely crucial point. For any observed correlation you see, there are always three potential realities. Variable A causes B, variable B causes A, or some hidden third factor causes both of them. Without rigorous evidence to distinguish among these three stories, treating correlation as causation is simply a guess, and it's a guess that is expensively dressed up as a factual finding.
Now, this brings us to the first massive strategic trap for executives, the hidden third variable. In statistics, this is formally known as a confounder. When allocating strategic capital, you must understand how confounders create structural mirages. They produce statistical connections where absolutely no direct causal relationship exists. And they're incredibly insidious because, on the surface, they appear perfectly logical until you actually scrutinize them.
Let's consider the textbook classic. If you look at the data, a sharp spike in ice cream sales perfectly correlates with an increase in drowning incidents. So what is the policy? Do we ban ice cream to save the swimmers? Of course we don't. The hidden confounder here is hot weather. Heat simultaneously causes a massive increase in ice cream consumption and an increase in swimming, which inevitably leads to more drownings. The two outcomes simply share a root cause. Their connection is nothing more than a statistical artifact.
Let's apply this rigorous logic back to our initial boardroom scenario. Does employee engagement cause profits? Well, perhaps, but consider the confounder here, underlying management quality or strategic clarity. Think about it. A highly disciplined, strategically clear executive team creates an environment that naturally fosters both deep employee engagement and robust financial profits. They are completely separate downstream outputs of good management. If a mediocre leadership team simply institutes a bunch of superficial engagement programs without actually fixing the strategic clarity, they are never going to see those promised financial returns.
But confounders aren't the only trap. We face an equally severe strategic risk, the phenomenon of reverse causation. And this risk is currently being supercharged by the mathematical inevitability of spurious data generated by our modern corporate analytics dashboards. Ask yourself, what if the arrow of time points entirely the other way? This is reverse causation. Highly profitable companies can simply afford the luxury of cultivating engagement, right? They have the financial security to offer better benefits, superior training, comprehensive wellness programs. In this case, the profits caused the engagement, not the reverse. Furthermore, you must be aware of what we call the multiple comparisons problem. Modern dashboards track hundreds, sometimes thousands of metrics. If an analyst tortures the data long enough, pure mathematical chance dictates they will eventually find coincidental correlations. These completely false, spurious patterns are then confidently presented to the C-suite as profound strategic insights. This forces us to confront a rather difficult question. In a complex, fast-paced corporate environment, gold standard randomized controlled experiments are usually practically impossible. So how do we systematically test what the observational data is really saying? How do we definitively verify the signal before we allocate millions in capital? We need to rely on a strict framework for evaluating causal claims to force necessary discipline into the process. You must ask yourselves, was the treatment randomly assigned? If not, are the confounders precisely measured and controlled for? Is the temporal order perfectly clear? Does the supposed cause actually happen before the effect? And finally, is there a plausible mechanical link connecting them? We have to utilize this structural logic to separate legitimate operational signals from incredibly costly noise. So, how do we actually build a decisive competitive edge in this environment? The resolution lies in establishing an augmented approach. We need to utilize AI-assisted analytics to relentlessly stress test the statistical claims presented by our internal teams and external vendors.
You need to treat your AI assistant not as a glorified summarizer, but as a formal, rigorous reasoning partner. Here is the exact protocol we recommend. Step 1. Input the causal claim exactly as it was presented to you. Step 2. Explicitly prompt the AI to argue the best possible case for reverse causation. Step 3. Prompt it to identify at least 2 plausible hidden confounders. And step 4. Demand the AI identify what specific real-world evidence would be required to physically falsify the original claim. You are systematically forcing the generation of alternative causal stories that your human analysts may have completely overlooked.
It comes down to forcing the analysis past the superficial. You absolutely must ask the hard conditional questions. Could the relationship actually run in the opposite direction? What unmeasured third factor might be driving both of these elements? Was this specific comparison genuinely specified in advance, or was it selectively cherry-picked from dozens of random dashboard queries? And crucially, if we acted on this finding and the causal interpretation turned out to be wrong, what would the actual financial and operational fallout be? I challenge you to run this exact stress test at your very next vendor pitch or your next internal performance review. Take their core claim, variable X is associated with Y, therefore we must immediately fund more of X, and run it through the AI reasoning protocol we've just mapped out. It is consistently astonishing how rapidly this exercise reveals that the actual most important variables driving the business were never even measured by the analysts in the first place. I want to leave you with an uncompromising final thought to evaluate your current portfolio. Ask yourself today, right now, how many of your current, highly funded strategic initiatives are built entirely upon a foundation of mere correlation, cleverly disguised as causation? It is time to rigorously audit your assumptions. Thank you for joining this explainer. Ensure you demand the standard of evidence required before you deploy your capital.